Just waiting for Joanna to get started. Very excited about this next session. Hello, Joanna. I hope you've all had a chance to have a bit of a break and some nourishment. I've got my daughter's mug, which she'll be very cross about if she were to see it. So just continuing on our journey today with Joanna McKenzie, who's Principal Data Scientist here at the Data Lab. And she is going to talk to you about how it's not just about the data. Thank you, Joanna.
Let me share my screen. I'll bring it up. So hopefully Marianne will let me know if there's any hiccups in the technology. Otherwise, hopefully you're now seeing my slides. I am Joanna McKenzie and I am the Principal Data Scientist for the Data Lab. I'm not always involved with the Masters cohort, but I think that the technical team at the Data Lab's got quite a lot to contribute to this. And it's really one of the high points of my years whenever I get to talk with you, interact with you, and it's always a pleasure to be involved in this work that the skills team are doing. I think my role today is to talk a little bit about the context of the programme that we're putting on for you beyond the studies that you're doing at the university and why we feel that's so important and why we put so much effort into that. And so my presentation is going to be about the bits of data science role or a data role in general, which is not specifically involved in the data. So as Marianne said, it's not just about the data. I'm going to talk here about a data scientist career, mainly as an example. Many of you will not be data scientists, you'll be data engineers, you'll be data analysts, you'll be people working in fintech or health science or social sciences. You're all going to be data professionals, and there's very, very little here that is specific to data science roles. So hopefully using it as an example will not exclude anybody from understanding and empathizing with the content. So you are now on phase one of your data scientist or your data career. And we can think a little bit about what that's going to look like in phase one. There'll be some of this direct teaching, not necessarily in person, given the circumstances this year. And there'll definitely be some of this where you're working on your own, doing a bit of coding or a little bit of work on data by yourself. And the sorts of problems that you might face in this phase one of your data journey might look a bit like this. So you're asked to solve problem X in order to demonstrate that you understand concept Y. All right, but a master's programme, even for those of you who are doing the longer one, is a limited time frame. And eventually you'll come out of that and you'll move on to phase two. So what does phase two look like? Well, there's a lot less of that. There's an awful lot less direct teaching once you're in a job role or a professional space. There's likely to be a lot more of this, so working directly with on one-to-one with a manager or a colleague to understand a data problem. But that coding, that sitting at the desk and working, that's still going to be there. The sorts of problems that you might face in phase two look a bit more like this. What can you do with our sales predictions? And when we move on to something that looks a bit more like phase three, you still got that colleague interaction, you still got that coding contribution. You're likely to also have something that looks a bit more like this, where actually you're standing up and you're saying, I think we should do X. And that is what I think of as a full data scientist or a full data professional space, when you're ready not just to do the job that people ask you to do, but to recommend a course of action as an expert. That's phase three. So essentially, most of us starting in a master's cohort have got some sort of ambition to get to that phase three stage. How many phases are there? I don't know. Every career is different and there's an awful lot going on, and I'm not going to promise that that particular model can be extrapolated beyond the three phases that I've got there. Certainly telling other people what to do might be a phase four, so maybe you'll get to that. But certainly we are going to focus on that progression from data professionals in training right the way through to a competent, confident individual who's recommending a data project for themselves. So let's go back to phase one and let's look at that problem that they're giving you there. Solve problem X to show you understand Y. It's a very clear instruction. The purpose of it is also very clear. And it's about you, ultimately speaking. The purpose of phase one is to develop you as an individual to the point where you can deliver your data project, whatever that might look like. So that's the type of problems that you'll likely face during your master's, during your training phase. Very clear problems with very obvious purpose. But what we looked at in phase 2, what can you do with our sales predictions? That's not clear. That's a vague instruction. It's got no particular purpose outlined there. And they're asking about something that involves them. It's not really about you. I mean, you're in there, but you're bringing that expertise to the table. But the deliverable is for them. It's all about them. And when we look at phase 3, I think we should do X. Well, now there's no instruction at all. You're bringing the purpose to the table. And it's about us. It's about you as part of an organization, bringing your contribution to the table and making things better for a whole team, a whole environment, to your whole context. So what we're trying to do with the program that the skills team have put together for you is help you build towards that phase 3 point, that professional status where you're bringing your own project to the table, you make your own recommendations. And thinking about building to that phase 3 is not just about the stuff that your universities are going to be so good at getting you really good at handling the data. There are other challenges in there that are part and parcel of succeeding through phase 2 and finally getting to that phase 3 stage. So let's look at these challenges. So the first one that was very obvious from the phase 2 instruction was vagueness. And ultimately, that's an issue of communication. The person who's giving you that instruction is vague because they don't actually know what they want you to do. And there's a problem in front of you to try and work with that person to really understand what would be valuable for them for their sales predictions, and to start bringing in your knowledge of what the technical feasibility of that would be. So it's a whole skill set in communicating effectively with somebody who doesn't have your level of technical knowledge. Challenge 2 is that hour. What can you do with our sales prediction? And of course, in the juxtaposition of you with our in that sentence says that you are not part of our in there. And that's about business context. When you're starting off in a new role, when you're starting off with a new career, you don't necessarily have the same context as the people that you're working for, the people that you're trying to work with. And that awareness of what the business is trying to do and why, what is valuable, and what your colleagues who are not data scientists are bringing to the table, what they know about, that is all something that you have to develop and you have to understand. So that's another soft skill that sets you up for success. The better you understand their context, the more effective your communication is, and the more value you bring to the table. Very important. Other challenges? It could be things like prioritizing tasks. What's the most important thing here? How do I use my time effectively? It could be things like figuring out what you can do that actually will add value to the organization rather than just sounding like a good idea. And that can be a real tricky one. It can be things like the limitations of the technology you have available to you in an organizational context, and the fact that there's only one of you working full time. How much can you actually do? You don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. Maybe it's not known at all. Maybe it's a new problem. And how do we build change? Once we've got this new capability, once I've delivered this data project for you, how do I make that stick? How do I make that change happen? And that's obviously an issue that sticks to many, many professionals. It's a big challenge. And all of these other challenges can be solved with various applications of different soft skills. So for prioritizing tasks, that's about communication. When it comes to adding value, that's back to that business context and understanding what's really important to the organization. Time and technology limitations is an exercise in compromise. That's what it's there about. That's what it's about. Not anything that you don't know. That's about your own development, but it's also about developing the skills to tackle that unknown capability and developing the organizational understanding of what the limitations are. And building change, well, I've picked communication, but building change is a challenge on a number of different levels. It's a tricky thing to manage and something that you get better at very slowly over time. But in all of this, is there a common solution? Is there something underlying all of these things that we can bring together that can help us understand how we build towards success? And I think the key thing in all of these is that it's never just you. It's very rarely just you. There's always an infrastructure, a society, an organization, or simply your family and friends There's always other people around about you. And understanding that can really change how you understand and interpret these types of challenges. So when it comes to vague instruction, the other challenges that we looked at earlier on, understanding context, and all of these priorities and tasks adding value, they all have other people that can really bring value in there. So with vague instruction, you might work with your manager, you might work with your client to really understand how you can make that into a much more specific, a much clearer task that you can actually deliver on. Understanding context, that's working with your client, which might be a person or it might be a team of people. Priorities and tasks is something you work with your manager on. Adding value, again, work with whoever your client is. Who are you delivering it for? Who needs this capability? Your manager, your client, your IT department can all help you with your time and your technology limitations. If you don't know that yet, maybe there's training you can do. Maybe there's an HR department that can support you. Maybe there's a manager. Maybe you can access some of these online courses and MOOCs that are funded, or work with a meetup and meet people there who are facing the same sorts of challenges. There's always an infrastructure, a set of people out there that are facing similar challenges. And with building change, that's everybody. You want everybody on site to build change. So that's it's not a thing that you face on your own. It is a thing that we face in whatever context we is. So it's not just about the data. None of the problems that you'll face in your career as a data professional are all about the data. It's always about the people.
That's absolutely lovely. Thank you very much, Joanna. That's it's so true, and that's why so much of our programme is focused on these other skills, how you can get that information from the context that you find yourself in to enable you to do the best you can in your job.
It's so important.
Thank you very much. We are going to try and keep to time here, so I don't see any questions and answers. So I'd just like to thank you so much, Joanna. If any questions come in, we will direct them to you later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.